Welcome to the Potter discussion.
Welcome back to the Potter discussion. This is episode 89, and on today's episode we will be discussing the true villains of Harry Potter. Let's do this. Greetings, everyone! Welcome back to the Potter discussion. I am very excited to be recording today because we are talking about true villains. Voldemort is kind of the face of evil, the overarching plot, leech, I guess you could call him, for the whole Harry Potter story, but it's the people behind him that make the magic, happen. It's the people behind him that really do horrible things, and that's what leads to Voldemort's success. If it was just Voldemort versus all of good, the all of good would win in a second. But he had an army. He had the Giants, the Death Eaters, the Snatchers. He had so many horrible people behind him that led to his, loss still. But it was still a better fight than just leaving it to himself. So it's a little bit of a tough topic because there are so many people to pick through. It's hard to pick, enough people just to fit in this one episode. But the true villains are something that I think are really important to talk about because they make the story. They make this whole Harry Potter thing, because without evil, there would be no evil to fight, I guess. So I'm very happy to be recording today, and let's just get right into it. However, before we get started, I will be reminding you that the SpeakPipe page link and the Google form link are still available in the show notes if you want to send in any questions, comments, topics, Quizmaster questions, or jokes. Yes, I am accepting jokes that you want me to hear, you want the audience to hear, or you want played on the show. Use those links. It's completely free. It'll only take a minute or two of your time, and I would greatly appreciate the feedback. So to kick off this episode, I think we should establish what is a true villain. What makes the true villain a true villain? Well, I think it's easy to say that Voldemort is a villain. He is probably one of the worst villains, but he isn't a true villain. Now, what I mean by a true villain is the person who is behind the scenes really doing everything that the villain tells them to. Now, the Death Eaters actually attack Hogwarts. The Giants actually attack Hogwarts. The Snatchers actually attack Hogwarts. But Voldemort doesn't. Yes, he does do that rage thing and cast a spell on the big bubble thing, but still, Voldemort doesn't do his own bidding. That's what the true villains are there for. He's the face. He's the owner of the company, but it's the workers that make that company tick. That's what happens. That's how Voldemort has been so successful. He has so many true villains on his side. And we are going to be discussing some of the worst true villains Voldemort has. He has thousands of true villains, but it's these couple that are really horrible. Not couples in like they're together or two, but these group of villains are going to be some of the worst villains you will ever see in your life, at least in Harry Potter. So let's just do it. Let's just kick it off. And I think we should probably start with the most obvious, and that is Umbridge. Dolores Umbridge, oh man, you could probably search up Dolores Umbridge meme and all you would find was, what non-Potterheads hate Voldemort and then what Potterheads hate Umbridge. Like every single Umbridge meme is exactly what that's just everything. So if that tells you anything, it tells you that Umbridge is not a fan favorite in the fan community. But Umbridge really was not a very nice person, and she had a very specific image in her brain that she had to execute. It had to be exactly that, and that really led to her downfall, as she couldn't waver from her ideas when she had them. But there are a couple of really bad things that she did, and one of them was torturing Harry. She tortured Harry. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but Umbridge tortured Harry. In the Order of the Phoenix, when Harry was in her office, he had a dream about Sirius, I think, and then he was trying to talk to him in the fireplace because Umbridge's fireplace was the only one not being monitored. So Harry broke into her office and used her fireplace, but Umbridge caught them, and she did some pretty bad stuff. So she did illegal stuff. That's something that should tell you anything. She is a strict follower of the rules, and she did something illegal. So that means that she really had an image in her head that she needed to execute. So that was something that she even like dramatically put the minister's picture down saying, hey, he doesn't need to know anything. That scene was horrible. And she did it just because she wanted information. She couldn't say, I'm going to take points off. She said, I'm going to use an unforgivable curse on you and possibly be sent to Azkaban just because I want one single piece of information I could easily get by asking you and threatening you with points or detention. Nope, she had to use one of the most illegal curses that is existing in the wizarding world, and yeah, I don't know what else to say here. She really did some of the worst possible things you can by using an unforgivable curse on a student as a professor working at the ministry. She was a ministry-employed professor at Hogwarts using a unforgivable and highly illegal curse on a student. I don't know how that worked out in her head, but she did it, and she wanted to, and she executed that, and that was just horrible. And she did ask for Veritaserum, but nope, Snape said, yep, you used it all on, Cho, sorry. So that was tough. That was really a horrible scene that Umbridge did. And another horrible thing that Umbridge did was helping the Ministry in Book 7. So, the Ministry is pretty much a relatively good force. Yes, they might have something unfair. They might be, taking a lot of money from its citizens just because they need to do something. Everyone hates taxes. Everyone hates everything. But it's true that they were on the good side. They were working against Voldemort, even though they might not have been, a favorite in the population. But that changed. At the end of the 6th book and at the beginning of the 7th, the Ministry shifted from good to bad, and Umbridge stuck by the Ministry for her life. She needed to be by the Ministry. She was like, yes, Ministry, haha. So Umbridge really dedicated her life to being at the Ministry of Magic, and she couldn't let that go when it was taken over by evil forces. And if that tells you anything, it might be that she's evil herself. She thinks that purebloods are the best. She thinks that all these crazy things. And that might be why she is such a horrible true villain. She is a villain. She sticks by Voldemort and helps their operation immensely. She interrogates the, fake witches and wizards of the world, even though they're probably real and they just want an excuse to throw a lot of wizards and witches in jail. But Umbridge enjoys the torture of people, as given an example by Harry, by all the people she interrogates, and her Patronus. Umbridge thinks of interrogating people to get her Patronus out, and that's exactly what she did. Her Patronus was giving off light as she was interrogating people in the chamber. That's just how much she enjoys it. So Umbridge really does these things that is inexcusable. Really horrible, and she does them anyways just because she needs that whatever. She needs to fulfill the image she has in her head of a perfect world, even though the perfect world she's imagining might not be as perfect as she might want it to be. And the final horrible thing that Umbridge has done to really put her role as a true villain, cement it in the ground, disrespecting the Centaur, house elf, and other half-breeds population. So, yeah, this might be one of the worst things that she did, which is saying a lot considering all Umbridges have done. But Umbridge just has a hatred for everything that isn't 100% human. And that's ridiculous. Every single thing in the Harry Potter universe is either human or not. That sounds really crazy and stupid to say of me, but it's true. Umbridge hates everything that isn't human. And even to go beyond that, everything that isn't pure blood human witch or wizard is pretty much, like throw them in the garbage. They don't matter at all. And that's what Umbridge actively practices. She calls all these half-humans, horrible names, and they respond accordingly. Just because of the horrible things that Umbridge herself is thinking and saying and doing, just because of this one belief that she has. And this one belief is really one of the most harmful she could ever have, just because there's so many people that are inhuman in the Harry Potter world, so she hates all of them, all of the half-humans. Just think. There are so many things that aren't human in the world. There are trees, rocks, plants, your badminton set in the yard. So everything that isn't human, if your neighbor hated everything that wasn't human, you would have a problem, because they would cutting down trees, they would be smashing rocks, they would steal your badminton set. So, and that would be impossible to live with, just because they couldn't accept anything that wasn't already in their head. This goes back to Umbridge's perfect world, her perfect image that she has in her head of only purebloods existing, ruling over the Muggles, and killing everything else. That's something that anyone can think of, but Umbridge really does it. She acts on her crazy images. She knows that if she can get the perfect world, then everyone will be happy and she'll be a hero. But that is so false. It's so far from the truth. I don't know how Umbridge got that idea in her head, but she did. I don't know, but something must have happened to lead to this belief that Umbridge has, that anything that isn't 100% pure blood and human, well, witch and wizard, of course, is bad, is horrible, doesn't belong in the world, or, wrongfully existing, just not exactly supposed to be there. And that's a really harmful belief, because, as we saw, one, she acted on it. She tried to kill a centaur in the Forbidden Forest, but it also led to her being captured by the centaurs after that. So, yeah, not exactly a happy turnout or a wonderfully, fuzzy and warm day for Umbridge when she got captured by the centaurs. That was just the best moment for everyone, just seeing her being carried away. And then when Harry says, "I must not tell lies, Professor, sorry," that was so sweet. Such a sweet moment. And yeah, that was just a great scene. But I'm getting sidetracked. Umbridge is horrible. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Umbridge, but let's move on, because we have some other pretty crazy people to talk about. And next on the list, we have Wormtail, Peter Pettigrew in the flesh. So Wormtail proved himself to be a very not trusting and really underling kind of character. He never tried to gain power. He never tried to overthrow anyone. He just switched from side to side, trying to find the winning person. Voldemort, in the end, was who he decided on. It was the wrong choice, but one he thought would work. And even, I think Voldemort summed it up the best. Wormtail sought me out in fear, and that's it. So Wormtail really isn't the kind of person who would go, yeah, you want a coffee? Yeah, you can borrow $20, get some gas while you're at it. No, he would say, no, it's mine, no, and then he would steal your house and your, firstborn child. So Wormtail, actually, he did. That's a perfect example. He gave away Lily and James, in a sense, stealing their firstborn child from them. Bottom line, Wormtail, not a great person. And he has a lot of horrible things that he did, which we will be listing off right now. And the first one is ratting out Lily and James to Voldemort. That was tough because that's just how it all started. Lily and James, okay, back to the plot holes episode. Why didn't, Lily or James become Secret Keeper? This is not that episode, but why? It seems such a simple thing, but they decided, nope, our friend who we definitely trust, she should do it. But whatever. But that happened. Lily and James made Wormtail their secret keeper, and they decided, you know what, this is fine. He'll never rat us out. The next day, their house is blown up. They're both dead, and Harry is left with a very large scar on his head, going to a school where everyone hates him. So that happened. But what really happened was Wormtail decided, I think Voldemort has the most power. So he went to Voldemort, gave Lily and James away, ran away to the depths of his rat caves, and that was that. Then Sirius Black found him and he said, how dare you do this? And of course we didn't actually see the scene, but that's why Sirius hunted him down. And then Wormtail killed, what was it? A dozen people and a wizard. So okay, it was a dozen people. The wizard was Pettigrew. That was in the count because Sirius was believed to have killed them, but it was actually Wormtail. So it was just a dozen muggles that were killed, which is kind of a lot. So you can understand why Sirius was sent to jail to Azkaban and why Pettigrew decided to run. So he bit off his finger, left it there, went down to the rats, and he looked exactly like a rat after that because he spent 12 years as a rat. So he really adopted the rat vibe, you know? But that was probably the worst thing he could have done, and he did. Ratting out Lily and James, giving them away, and in the end, resulting in their death. The ceasing of their life, and a really, really not exactly fun manner. This next thing I have on my list is, we touched on it before, but it is something we should probably highlight as one of his horrible deeds, and that is leaving his friend to rot in Azkaban for 13 years. Wormtail left Sirius Black, his long-term childhood friend, to rot in Azkaban for a crime that he didn't commit. Wormtail killed a dozen people. It was blamed on Sirius. He was taken to Azkaban and left there for more than 10 years. A trademark move, truly a trademark thing that has stayed with Wormtail for his life. That's his signature thing. He blames everything on other people and wriggles away, so to speak, to the sewers to escape. And that's what he has done for the entire series. That's his thing. That's what Wormtail does. He does these horrible acts and then blames them on other people just to crawl back to the people with the most power so he can win. There is one final thing I would like to discuss about Wormtail, and that is using Harry's mercy as an escape route. So when Wormtail, Harry, Ron, Hermione, Sirius, and Lupin were taking Wormtail up to the castle to the Dementors, after Harry said James wouldn't have wanted you guys to kill Wormtail, Lupin forgot to take his Wolfsbane potion, transformed into a werewolf, yikes, and Wormtail changed into a rat, and then scampered away. Haha, scampered. Very funny. So that was a really, really horrible thing to do. I mean, horrible is such an overused word in this episode, but it's true. This was horrible. It was really not a very nice thing for him to do. And because Harry gave Wormtail this chance of a lifetime, his life would have ended. That's why I say lifetime, because his life would have ended if Harry hadn't stepped in. And then, right when Wormtail could, he escaped. He ran away right when everyone wasn't looking. And that's just what he does. He, used his friend's suffering to his own advantage. That's another good way to put it. He uses other people's, horribleness to his advantage. He exploits their most guarded weaknesses just so he can get away. And that's what Wormtail did. And that's what he always will continue to do. And our final true villain of the day is Lucius. You might be wondering why Lucius is on my list, but it's just because he's kind of the opposite of the Weasleys. And the Weasleys I really see as Harry's family. That's his bubble. That's who he is closest with, because of course his parents aren't around to be his family. So the Weasleys kind of stepped in that role, and the Malfoys, especially Lucius, they're kind of opposites. And Lucius tries to make Harry's life horrible and the Weasleys' life horrible just because he doesn't like them. He doesn't like them. And granted, the Weasleys don't like him, but they aren't going to every length of the earth to, destroy the Malfoy family. But Lucius is. And, of course, that contributes to Malfoy doing horrible things to Harry at school and helping Voldemort and doing all these different things that really, really aren't exactly good for Malfoy's resume. But before we get started with Malfoy, I would like to say that Lucius really is kind of at the bottom of my list as true villains go, because he did have a kind of a mini redeem. At the end, it was revealed that the Malfoy family just wanted to get away intact. Lucius, Narcissa, and Draco just get away and never go back again. They did that at the very end of the year just because Voldemort was kind of their go-to. They're pure-blood Slytherins. Voldemort's kind of their go-to guy. So the Malfoys did, but then they realized that was the wrong option, because if they just raise an eyebrow in Voldemort's direction, then boom, you're dead. So not exactly a very, happy and relaxing work environment. And the Malfoys, believe me, the Malfoys realized that very quickly. So they decided to please Voldemort, to give them their mansion, to, use their cellar to get prisoners, to, do everything to do Voldemort's bidding, just to please him and get out from under his grasp. But Voldemort knew what they were doing the whole time, just using their generosity to his advantage, which was, I wish he could be a true villain, but he is the villain of the story. So Lucius and Narcissa and Draco are all true and fake villains. I wish I could say that they aren't a villain at all, but they did do some pretty villainous things in the beginning, and that's what we will be highlighting. After the fifth book, I believe, Lucius was really just focused on getting out alive and escaping from Voldemort. So it was after that everything really fell apart for him, and he tried to get away. So after the fifth book and down, that's what I'll be talking about. Not just to cut him some slack, because he did struggle a lot to get away from Voldemort, and that's something we have to give him credit for. So we're not going to talk about his horribleness in the 7th and 6th book, just 5th, 4th, 5th, 2nd, and 3rd. And 1st, of course. So that starts with beating Dobby for years. We've been nice to Lucius, but now we're gonna get dirty. So Dobby the house elf was under the Malfoy's control for his life. That's what the house elf does. They're born and they serve, which is, they like it, so it's not that bad, but they get beat, and they get beat by beat. Not by everyone, but by the Malfoys, because the Malfoys don't have anyone else to take their fury and stress out on, so they take it out on Dobby because he's there and because they can, which is horrible. And Dobby was defenseless. He couldn't fight back to his masters. He couldn't even snap his fingers and do a cool vanish thing just to get away. He had to take the beatings. He punished himself. He was trained to hurt himself if he did something his masters he thought would not like. And if you think about that, he hurt himself just because his masters didn't like it. That is horrible. That's disgusting. That's disgusting for Lucius to do, to beat a defenseless creature just because he can. That's like my kick a puppy thing, If you're a villain, you would kick a puppy, which is exactly what all the villains would do. And that's what Lucius did. Dobby is just as defenseless as a little newborn puppy, and Lucius kicked him a lot. So that is the first item on my list for being a true villain in the Harry Potter world. Now, number 2 is convincing the minister that Harry and Dumbledore were crazy. So this isn't, an explicitly stated fact, but it's pretty much, I shouldn't say pretty much, but it is heavily implied. And that is that it was Lucius that convinced the minister that Harry and Dumbledore and all the good guys were crazy. We see Lucius and the minister in the hallway in the Department of Mysteries. Lucius donates a lot of money. He spends a lot of time around the ministry. He says nice things. He just kind of coddles the minister. And eventually, when the minister is like, "Yeah, Lucius is cool. He's a good guy," then Lucius can start implanting these horrible ideas and really doing bad things. And I think Voldemort came up with that plan because it's a good thing. The minister is a very, very easy to get into his good graces if you just say, "I like your tie," and he's like, "Yeah, thanks, I'll do whatever you want." So that's probably not what he would do, but he's just a very easy person to get in good graces with, and that's exactly what Lucius did. He convinced the minister that he was the good guy, Voldemort was the good guy, and it was Dumbledore and Harry that were bad. And I shouldn't say that Lucius convinced that the minister that Voldemort was good. He just convinced the minister that Harry and Dumbledore were lying that Voldemort was back. Because, yes, the ministry was completely against Voldemort. That stays true for the whole time except for, the 6th and 7th books. But the minister never believed Harry and Dumbledore that Voldemort was back, and Lucius just really helped that idea along. He was really saying, don't believe them, because this is a perfect moment for a Dumbledore quote, and here's my Dumbledore quote of the day. "You will always face the choice between what is right and what is easy. And every time, someone who doesn't know what they're doing will always pick what is easy, just because that's the easier option." And that's what Fudge did. He picked the easy option to believe that Voldemort wasn't back, that Lucius was good, Harry and Dumbledore were crazy, and he was the only one who was smart. That's what he accepted. But the right option was Voldemort was back, Lucius is doing bad things, you should join forces with Dumbledore, take Dumbledore's advice, and move on Voldemort because Voldemort moves on him. So that's what the minister decided. The easy option, not the right one, not the one that he should have picked, but the one that he wanted to, which is absolutely the worst thing he could have done. But it isn't the minister's fault. It's Lucius's and Voldemort's fault. They convinced the minister that that was true, and they convinced the minister that Harry and Dumbledore were cray-cray. And our final thing of the day is leaving when he was needed the most. So, I said we wouldn't talk about the final battle, the 7th book, but I just couldn't leave this one out because it doesn't really apply to the, whole theme of he was good in the end, because this was kind of probably the worst thing he could have done. Which is, it's kind of a weird thing to talk about. So what I mean is, when Voldemort started the final battle and all, Harry rolled out of Hagrid's arms, ran away, a ton of Death Eaters started to disapparate. They flew up and they went away, and they're cool black smoke things. But Lucius, Narcissa, and Malfoy ran away. They escaped down the bridge. They walked like half a mile down that thing, but I don't know what they were doing. And he left when he was needed the most. However, this is not something that I am sad about. It's just something that is very disloyal and horrible for him to do. However, he did leave Voldemort, so it's not a bad thing. I just felt it was important to mention that he saw his opening and he left. He left for good reasons, and he left in good, I don't know what you would call it, but he left because he needed to keep his family alive, and he did it because he loved his family. Well, I think intensely liked is probably a better term for it. I don't think he could love anyone. But he left just because he wanted to keep his family intact and keep the Malfoy line going. Not because he, wanted to help or because he didn't like Voldemort. He just thought family was the most important thing. But Voldemort needed him in that moment. That's why Voldemort gathered his followers, so they could help him in the end. And Lucius left. He went back on his promise. He went back on everything he had done, and he really undid all of the work that he had previously put in. And that was just something that I am happy he did, but Voldemort certainly wasn't. So it was just a very disloyal thing to do, and not exactly a fun and happy ending for Voldemort. So Lucius, is a overwhelmingly not happy person. He is just sad and stressed and nervous and worried for his life every second of every day because he is with Voldemort. And he realized that the second he joined, and he realized that he had to get out the second he joined as well. So that led to a lot of crazy things and a lot of things that he probably would not have usually done if he was himself. And that'll just about wrap it up for today's episode. If you have any questions, comments, or topics that you would like to hear on the podcast, definitely send me an email. My email is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. That is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. If you could just scroll down in your podcast app of choice, tap those 5 stars, or even leave a written review, that could help me out more than you could ever know, and it helps other listeners find the show. As always, use information to your advantage, and I will see you later.